Hello, everyone, and welcome to another weekly episode of our Stories from Web Chapter Chats. We are already on chapter 10, so 10 weeks of this so far. This week is all about making excuses. For those of you that are new to our chapter chat, Stories from Web is a book that I wrote with my entire team over at Webb Elementary in Navasota, Texas. Features stories from people from the nurse to the counselor to the secretary, teachers, and instructional aides, everybody that plays a part in the lives of kids. And each week I talk through a different chapter in the book. Today's chapter is Making Excuses. And this is a chapter that I think can ruffle a little feathers, but also provide some great insight and ideas over how not to make excuses. Because as we talk about in the chapter, we are all guilty, myself included, of making excuses on why we don't do things in the best interest of kids. I could think of one just recently, how when we were getting ready for our summer reading challenge this summer, I myself found myself making excuses on why we couldn't do it or why it wasn't going to be successful, whether it was the kids didn't have internet or they didn't have books or nobody was going to care. And I remember sitting next to a Scholastic rep of mine, and she sat down, she goes, "Todd, aren't you doing exactly what you say not to do? You're sitting here making excuses for kids when instead you could be working on solutions." And I went, oh my gosh, I'm so guilty right there in that moment of what I do all the time when I talk about is not making those excuses. And there's a couple of stories in this chapter. One of them is, it says kindergarten teacher next to her name, but she's actually our reading interventionist now, and it's Leisha Marsh. And she talks about, that as teachers, we have frustrations that happen every day of the year. I've been there, you've been there, and sometimes we think that it only happens in our class or it only happens at our school. But let me tell you, no matter what school you're at, you're going to be frustrated about coworkers, kids, parents, all kinds of things. But when it comes to students, sometimes we can get so frustrated with certain kids that just know our buttons and know how to push us. And what Lisa talks about is, she said the main thing she's learned about working with kids is that for the kids that frustrate you, you have to look past the frustration and love them. And, it's not as easy as it sounds. People all the time will say things like, oh, if you just love the kids, everything will come around. And it's like, well, the kids who need it the most are the ones that are going to continually push you away. And what I found is those kids will continually push you away because they're trying to see if, somebody else has walked away in my life. So if I keep pushing you, will you walk away like everybody else is so I can say you lied and that you're not really there for me? And she just talks about how we have to almost train our thought processes to think that there is a place that the bad behavior is coming from. And one of my favorite phrases is always, hurting people hurt others. And we have to remember that. Brad Montauk, who is the creator of Kid President, he recently shared this image and this phrase that he thought, he uses the phrase, I'm a human being and I just want to be loved. And he said every time he runs into anybody, no matter what their behavior or interactions are, angry, sad, happy, mad, he always remembers, looks at them and thinks, they're saying the same thing. I'm a human being and I want to be loved. And if we think about it from that perspective, everything that we do can come back and reflect that. And she talked about how, even as a teacher, sometimes we have those frustrations with the parents. I wish those parents could help their child at home, or I wish they would look in their daily folder, or they don't spend any time with their children, or why do parents think it's the teacher's fault? And she said, she puts in here, I was one of those teachers who said those things. The past year, I realized that my parents would like to help their kids, but some of them didn't have the ability to, whether that was they had several jobs to work or they didn't know how because the materials were so different. But when parents are in that situation, when it comes to their child being home, sometimes they just want to be with their kid and not doing all the work that some teachers send home. And then the final place she talks about frustrations is when it comes to coworkers and just being able to treat our coworkers with respect and be professional at all times. And that is not easy for any of us, because when somebody steps on our toes or makes us frustrated or we don't feel like they're putting in the same effort we are, we don't always have to agree with the decisions people are making, but we can't be angry at what we can't control. And all we really can control is ourselves. And my mom used to always say, nobody's making you mad, Todd. Nobody's making you sad. Nobody makes you happy. You control your emotions and you decide if they are going to affect you enough that you are going to let them make you mad or you are going to let them make you make excuses. because you're the only one that is in control of all those things. I talk about here how reflection is such an important piece of our career. Just taking that time to step back and go, what did I do? What could I have done differently? How could I have made it better? There is a former employee of ours who used to be our art teacher and instructional aide, Nina Salazar. She wrote a beautiful story in here about her daughter, Jacinta, who is one of the students in our life skills program, and about how her daughter was born with DeGeorge syndrome, a very rare genetic disorder affecting chromosome 22. And she said that that she is a tiny girl who is determined to live a normal life. And she talks about in her book, or in this story from the book, about how that little girl of hers has taught her what it means to fight, has taught her what a miracle looks like, and how you can just get through anything. And she says, every day is a struggle, but we move forward. I tell my kids, God didn't wake us up today for nothing. I feel like we can all make a difference and continue to try. Jacinta gives me a purpose, and I feel the need to share it with everyone I come in contact with because she makes everything more meaningful. I love that. So powerful. So my encouragement for you this week is that this week, you are going to face trials. You are going to face mistakes. You are going to face struggles and frustrations, but face them head on. Make the most out of them. Look for the lesson that's hiding in the frustration. And when you need to ask for forgiveness, ask for forgiveness. When you need to say I'm sorry, say I'm sorry. And when you need to speak to someone about the way they've made you feel, go and speak to that person. Let's throw out all of the tired, old excuses and make a positive difference in the lives of others today. Keep working, keep fighting. You have a whole group of kids who show up every single day, and they don't care about what's going on outside of that little world you call your classroom or your school. They just want you to be there to love them and teach them and show them how much they can be. Hope you check out a copy of Stories from Web today, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and we'll see you again next Sunday.